Hey everyone, welcome to the first week of Know Your Audience. The BOC that we're doing here with the Knight Center for Journalism in the Americas, all about knowing your audience in order to have a strategy for growing and engaging the right kind of audience for your journalism. My name is Amanda Zamora, and here in the first week I wanted to kind of get started a little bit sharing a little bit about me and how I got to working in audience development. I have been working in news. I'm actually a graduate of the University of Texas, which is where we're here making this course material for you. I graduated from the J School as a reporter, and I quickly moved into digital news. After that, I started at the Washington Post as a digital editor and producer and sometimes reporter. Basically, the beauty of digital, right, is you get to work on a little bit of everything, and that was definitely me. I also spent 4 years at ProPublica, the nonprofit investigative news site that is based in New York City, and did a lot of audience development, but also engagement work that was very much focused on pulling readers into the journalism, asking them for their stories, getting them involved, having deep dive discussions with them about the accountability work that we were doing. And now I have been at the Texas Tribune since 2016, back here in my home state of Texas. And here I'm the Chief Audience Officer. I work on our audience development strategy. And I sort of bridge both sides of the organization, the editorial, the news side, which is my background, but also the business side. And we'll talk a little bit more about how your audience strategy really touches on both of those sides. We are very much bridge roles on my team. And this course actually is really meant to help you think about where you fit in a bigger strategy, whether you are on the audience team or in a business role or in a traditional reporting or creative role. We all have a part to play in growing the kind of audiences that we want to have sustainable journalism. So that's a little bit about me and where I'm coming from. Looking forward to getting to know all of you. We're going to start with a little bit of an overview of what we're going to cover today for the first module. In each of these modules, we're going to kind of have three parts. We're going to talk about the big picture and a little bit of context for the kind of strategic thinking that we're doing. We're going to then go into process and talk a little bit about how to go about doing the work of executing against these strategies. And then we're going to kind of review the next steps for this particular course. And that for us is going to include building out this audience map. It's a template basically that's meant to give you all a blueprint for developing an audience strategy for whatever work you're doing within your organization. And we're going to look at that in more detail today too. First, some housekeeping. You will inevitably need some help either in getting your questions answered about how to complete this course successfully. You may have a follow-up question after watching this video or as you get into the quiz and the discussion forums. So here's what you need to do if you have any questions. You need to check out the questions for instructors forum if you have questions for me about the actual content of the course. If you have questions, either technical questions about your registration or your certificate of completion or any of those kinds of things, check out the questions about the course platform. The other thing that you need to make sure to do is introduce yourself in the student forum. We also have a Facebook group. I'm going to be present in both of those places, and this is more than just a class, it's a community. You will benefit the most by participating. And so I really encourage you to jump into the forums, get started by introducing yourself. And the other thing that we're going to do that's a little bit different is we have a class survey that I built to get to know all of you a little bit better. And you'll kind of see as we get into the different modules how this kind of really basic survey tool can help you get to know your own audience. We're going to test it out by using it in this course to get to know each other a little bit better. So The difference being, if you're going into the forums, you're going to be having some freewheeling conversations. We have those all the time on social media every day, maybe in a Facebook group. The difference between those kinds of discussions and, survey feedback is we get to structure the data a little bit more. We get to design it to kind of get at the questions that we're most interested in answering with our audience. So we're going to look at that together. The first step in making that helpful is you all going into the course platform and finding the link to the class survey and filling it out. It should probably take you about two minutes, and I'll be sharing the results of that survey at the end of Module 2. All right, so we're going to start talking about the big picture before we get into any of the nitty-gritty, and that is with a basic question. What kind of audience am I building? I think typically in a newsroom, and forgive me if this is not you and you operate in a very sophisticated universe, I congratulate and salute you and appreciate you. But I think oftentimes, whether it because we intend to or because frankly the news business is a deadline-oriented, fast-paced environment, this is often what the typical audience development process looks like, right? We make a thing, we write a story, we make a video, we create content. That's the majority of our time is spent creating, right? That's why we got into this business, is to tell stories. And then at the end, we think about audience development by asking someone to promote it for us. Can you please put it on the homepage? Can you please put it on Facebook or retweet me or whatever the case may be? Maybe you're really good at posting to your own social channels, and that's awesome. But there is so much more to audience development than just this way of thinking about it. And that's what this course is focused on. I want to talk a little bit about this group. It's called Zebras Unite. It's actually a group of entrepreneurs. Jen Brandel, if any of you recognize her name, she is a really terrific role model for me when I think about audience development that's about sustainability and kind of like more meaningful relationships with our readers. She is the founder of Hearken. It's an engagement tool that you may have also heard about that allows readers into the editorial process. She's also part of this startup movement that's all about rethinking what the venture process is like for creating companies that are not just unicorn companies that are sort of all about quickly building scale and profitability as soon as possible, but trying to create businesses that really meet community needs and are built to last. And so, okay, this is a little bit of a zigzag from this course. We're not going to be talking about startups or entrepreneurialism, but I think it actually applies a bit to what we're talking about when we think about audience development in a more nuanced way. So this quote from Zebras Unite, and I encourage you to check them out. It's zebrasunite.com. The current technology and venture capital structure is broken. It rewards quantity over quality, consumption over creation, quick exits over sustainable growth, and shareholder profit over shared prosperity. It chases after unicorn companies bent on disruption, i.e. Facebook, rather than supporting businesses that repair, cultivate, and connect. And I thought with just a couple of edits, this was really applicable also to the kind of environment that we are faced with when we talk about what it means to build an audience in the newsroom. A lot of us are under a lot of pressure to create things that have a really, a big audience. And we talk about audience, we talk a lot about page views and uniques. And I don't know that that's necessarily, reach is certainly important, and it's a big part of the process that we're going to talk about in this course, but it's not the only part. If we want to build relationships with our audience that last and that provide value to both the audience and to our news organizations as businesses, we need to think about how we go about reaching and engaging our audiences a bit differently. So, if we think about the unicorn kind of model, and you can go to zebrasunite.com and they actually have a really great comparative between the unicorn and the zebra, but this is like the TLDR version of that. Unicorns are mythical, their end game is, unicorn companies are mythical. The end game is exponential growth, their method is quantity, they want to acquire users, and the people who benefit, namely, are a few. individuals. But when you're talking about a Zebra company or a Zebra approach to audience development, if you will, zebras are real, right? Think about the difference of thinking of audiences that are basically just a number of clicks or a number of page views versus thinking about an audience that is comprised of real people with names and professions and interests. The end game in the Zebra context is sustainable growth. The method really prioritizes quality over quantity. We think about not just that we acquire users because we need them to monetize them, but like that users also obtain value from us, and that the people who benefit is the community and the public at large, right? This second approach seems much more in line with the public service mission of journalism, that whether you work in a commercial news company or a nonprofit company, that's really what gets us up out of bed every morning, right? Is to create journalism that helps people, that informs people. So if we kind of factor in the Zebra approach maybe to an audience development process, I think you might have a little bit more of a method to the madness. And this course is about this process. We are, over the course of these 4 modules, going to tackle this process, steps 1 through 4. And we're going to start with thinking about what our purpose is as a newsroom, or maybe as you as an individual contributor in that newsroom. We're going to start it by documenting our goals. The next thing we're going to think about is, once we've established sort of our organizational or editorial or even product goals, then we're going to move into thinking about, okay, who am I trying to serve? I have my goals now. Who am I trying to kind of reach and engage relative to my goals? The next thing we're going to think about is, once I've identified that target audience, and I've researched that audience, I'm going to think about, okay, how best can I come up with a plan, given the goals that I have and the audience that I want to reach, to effectively reach and engage that audience? What is my content plan going to look like? What's my promotion plan going to look like? And then at the end, of course, we set goals at the beginning. We're going to really identify the ways that we're going to measure success, whether it's quantitative, which we're very accustomed to thinking about in terms of page views and metrics. But we're also going to talk a little bit about the ways to measure success from a qualitative standpoint. So why do all of the above? Well, we want to get beyond vanity metrics as a way of understanding what it means to grow and engage an audience. We want to build meaningful relationships with our readers. And at the end of the day, we want to sustain our journalism, right? You may not have a role that is directly connected to fundraising or subscriptions or sponsorships or ad sales, but as a creator of content, as someone who is working within the news landscape, we all have a part to play in thinking about how what we do on a daily basis helps support that kind of sustainability. We're going to sidebar a little bit also to talk about what this looks like in terms of a strategy. You may have an audience funnel at your news organization. Hopefully you do. We want to think about, if we want to get beyond just thinking of vanity metrics as the primary reason for strategizing on a daily basis, we kind of need to think about, well, what happens after someone finds a story and clicks on a headline. We want to think beyond reach, which is at the top of the funnel, how we connect initially with readers, to how we move them deeper into engagement with us, and then finally, at the bottom of the funnel, how do we convert those readers, whatever our business model may be? How do we move people from initial contact with us into deeper relationships that support the business? So if we want to think about the top of the funnel, that winds up, the ways that we impact how we reach people and make that initial contact are the stories that we choose to tell. Are they relevant to the audiences that we're seeking? How are we headlining those stories? How are we optimizing those stories for search, for social media? Which platforms are we choosing to invest time in? When are we publishing? All of those kinds of decisions. Maybe your role fits into that top tier. Maybe particularly if you're a content creator, maybe you're going to have more of an impact on the reach side. That's fine. The next sort of section in the audience funnel, drawing people further down, is how do we get them to engage with us more deeply? Maybe that's having them spend more time on our site by giving them interactive, sticky content or databases. Maybe it's by holding conversations in the comments where people actually want to spend time. Maybe it's getting involved in live coverage, whether it's on your site or on social media. Twitter in particular is someplace that we know people like to go when news breaks. Maybe it's holding events. Maybe it's something that doesn't even happen on your website. Maybe it's getting people to sign up to attend an event in person with you, getting them to sign up for a newsletter. The kinds of things that are going to engage people in more sustained activity with you, and ultimately, hopefully, to get them to offer up the kind of information about themselves and their interests that are going to help you as a news organization and a publisher get to know them better. And we'll come back to that a little bit later. And then finally, maybe your role is more aligned with the business goals of the organization. Maybe it's about, getting readers, down that funnel to the point where they value what you do so much that they're going to subscribe after they see that paywall prompt again. Or like for us at the Texas Tribune, all of our content is free to publish. We don't require you to pay for it in order to consume it, but we hope that we do such a good job at creating relevant content and creating the kind of experience that you value so much that you were inspired to support our public service journalism with your donations. It could also be around how you're working with the sponsorship team on special packages or particular verticals or projects. So the question I guess you might want to also be asking yourself as you're thinking about, all right, what project am I going to pick for this audience map project that we're going to do over the course of this class is, where do I fit within this audience funnel? Where does my role fit? Am I more active at the top of the funnel? Am I working more within that middle section on engaging people more deeply? Or am I working more at converting them and getting those engaged users to take that next step towards sustainability? So here's a look at what that audience funnel looks like. For example, at the Texas Tribune, there are a million metrics that we can and do track, as I'm sure many of your newsrooms do. But how do you kind of think about high level, what are the big metrics that I'm going to be focused on to help me understand whether or not I'm doing that job of moving people from initial contact deeper into relationship with me and then ultimately into a sustainable relationship? So for us, we think about at the top of the funnel, a traditional metric that I'm sure y'all are familiar with, unique visitors. So this is for the first quarter of this year. We had 1.7 million unique visitors on average every month. The next point of the funnel that we sort of keep an eye on is how many of those people do we convert into engaged users. Email lists are a really important kind of factor in conversion for us, but we don't count everyone on our email list. We only count the people who are actively opening and reading and the people who have attended an event recently. So that's how we calculate engaged users, really active newsletter subscribers and event attendees. And then we look to see how many of those people then we can convert into members. And what you can see, one of the things that we're really working on is improving the health of our email engagement with our readers and getting them to attend events more. We are overperforming at converting at the bottom of the funnel, but what we really need to do is expand the middle of the funnel. That's one thing that we're really prioritizing this year at the Texas Tribune. So a lot of our projects are around improving how we get people to sign up for newsletters on our site and elsewhere in our actual newsletter products, and so on and so forth. So you might think, again, as you're thinking about what project you want to take on, again, where does your role reside in the audience funnel? Where can you have the biggest impact on not just growing your audience, but growing your audience in a sustainable way or growing the right audience? You may inhabit any of those roles. That's totally fine. The other little sidebar I would make here is that this may seem overwhelming, and that's because we're talking about audience development in the big picture. You do not need to think about coming up with all of this for your organization in the course of this class. What you're going to do is to pick one project relative to your role that may fit into just one of these slices of the audience funnel. That's totally fine. The part that we're going to do together, though, is that process of once you figure out what it is that you want to move the needle on. Maybe it's an editorial project. Maybe it's a new newsletter. Maybe it's a membership campaign. We're going to follow that audience map process to figure out how to do the goal setting, how to identify the audiences that we're trying to reach, how to come up with plans that will effectively reach and engage them, and how to measure success.